Alrighty, gang, welcome back to the Active Self-Protection Podcast. I am once again your host, Mike Williver, and I remain your favorite former Fed. With us today, a new friend of mine. His name is John. John lives in the Chicagoland area. If you've ever been to Chicago, you know that could be anything within a 30-mile radius of downtown Chicago, basically. It's huge. It's a huge area. And the incident that happened to him happened in Wisconsin, and we'll get to that here shortly.
BakerTargets.com is where I get the targets you see me shoot all the time on Active Self-Protection Extra. They ship fast, their prices are great, and they have all kinds of targets, both for competitive shooting, defensive shooting, and fun too. Check them out.
And you know what I forgot to ask you, John, is what manner of work do you do, sir? What do you do for a living?
I'm a captain pilot on a corporate aircraft based out of the Chicagoland area, and I've been a pilot for going on almost 20 years.
Very cool. All right. So, John and I talked briefly about a little bit of pilot stuff. I wasn't aware he was actually a pilot, and you are working with someone else on some sort of podcast deal. Real quick, just give that a plug, even if it's not out yet. Tell our listeners what it is you guys are doing over there and what it's about.
Sure. I'm working with the Pilot Network and a guy named Joe over there, and we're working on the medical side that you guys are actually going to hear about today. And then also, if you guys are interested, I also host my own podcast, Captain Johnny's Podcast, and I'm working through the journey of me becoming a captain right now. And I am in Arizona at this time and figuring out basically the next point of life and how to figure where I want to fly. I have everything set up, but it's still another new step. And this is all going on while I move myself from Chicago, basically to continue on a lifelong dream. And a matter of fact, that podcast should be out hopefully by the time this one is aired. And I will be talking more about the details of the journey of how to become a pilot, how I work through points of my life where I struggled through certain lessons, and how I continue to work through all the, as I call it, turbulence. And I know a lot of people don't like that term with airplanes, but it is. It's a change in your life that you don't expect. And I work through everything to make sure that my dream came true.
Very cool. So, this is on topic, I guess. It's on the topic we were just talking about. Someone tried to explain to me turbulence recently in a way a dummy like me could understand it. And what this person told me, and this person's a pilot, not John, by the way. What this person told me basically is, if you're driving through an area of windiness, on the freeway, that area goes on for 10 minutes, and then you're in a pocket where there's no wind really. And you sort of notice it. But when you're going 500 miles an hour at 30,000 feet, you go through these pockets of different, I guess, density air and air with different wind speeds. And
that's
you're going
correct,
through them very quickly. And that's kind of why you feel that shaking. Is that pretty much accurate? Is that more or less?
It's the easiest way to describe it. So,
how would you describe it?
Yeah, it's the easiest way, because there's two different airflows. There's one that goes underneath the wing, and then there's one that goes above the wing, and that creates speed, drag. There's 4 principles of flight. I could go on about this for a while, as you can know. But so when you're going through different air, as this pilot, described, you may hit a different speed, a different change, different direction. And that all comes with typically weather fronts. So like a low pressure or high pressure have different characteristics to turbulence. So the easiest way is exactly what you said. But I can...
I'm glad I retained that well enough to repeat it at least.
You did. So, yeah. You did. We're just trying to fly through the air at a very, very fast speed, and then we hit disruption.
So I got to put you in touch with John and another John friend of ours who's out of Iowa, who's a pilot and a meteorologist. I think you guys would all just get together and geek out on pilot and weather stuff.
Oh, I'm sure we would.
Is not the point of this podcast, ladies and gentlemen. As you know, we're here to talk about self-defense and self-defense related stories. And your story, you've given me kind of a rough breakdown of what happened, but it is, and I use this word advisedly, it is a harrowing tale. It sounds terrible and awful, and there was some serious injuries, and there was some serious legal repercussions for the person who did it, and there was a lot of recovery, I assume, for you and the other person that was injured. So uh, when all this happened, about how long ago was the incident in question?
It's approximately about 11 years ago.
Okay, so it's been a while.
And
So you've had time to look
yeah,
back and reflect on all this.
oh,
And
completely,
good deal.
completely. And it is something where I now think about it and I was like, I can't believe this happened in my life. And when I tell people this, and like I just gave you a little blip of like a news article and got you, the kind of the rundown of what happened,
Hmm.
but people can't even fathom. They're like, there's no way. You're, the way you speak, the way you comprehend everything, the way you just act, you never know it.
Yeah,
And
and we're,
if
we're
it wasn't
foreshadowing
for
we're foreshadowing a traumatic head injury, by the way, in case you're wondering at home.
yeah, it
Just
was
let
a
you
very, very traumatic injury, and we'll get into that in a little bit. I know that.
absolutely.
And it's something that I still have to remind myself that it happened to me because I just live every single day like it's, my last basically. And I've always had that even before this injury happened. And so now going through this and reflecting on it and looking into what I have done and changed in my life, there is things that do relate to this particular event for sure.
Absolutely. So let's not waste a whole lot of time here. The pleasantries have come to an end, folks. This is a chapter marker. I need to make sure I note this. Uh, just kind of give us a rough overview. Where were you? What were you doing? And how are the other people in this story sort of related? Kind of walk us through that.
Sure. So the two people that relate into this story is one was my best friend, and she was previously dating the guy who created this whole entire traumatic event.
Hmm.
And I had been working for a company down in Kansas City, and I had vacation time, and it's the first time in my life that where I've actually worked with a company that had vacation time. So I was coming back to the Chicagoland area. And it was kind of interesting because I've been commenting to my boss. I was like, I don't take vacation. I don't know how to take vacation and everything. And interesting note I should say now is that I actually haven't taken a real vacation since then. So we'll get, and some people may understand why not after, we talk about this. Yet I decided I was like, all right, I'm like, if I'm forced to take a vacation, I got time off. I'm going to go hang out with friends and family in Chicagoland area. For the people who don't know, Janesville is about an hour to an hour and 15 minutes of O'Hare, and O'Hare is about a half an hour from the city of Chicago, the downtown area. So you're looking at about an hour and a half, hour and 45 minutes away from the actual downtown part of Chicago.
Yeah. See my
Um,
earlier comment about the Chicagoland area being basically 12 states. It's huge.
Oh, it's very huge. I mean, we got 12 million people crammed into a 30 to 40-mile range. I mean, of this, and people can't believe how it's happening. The city alone is 2.8 million, just city proper.
Right.
So yeah, it's a very big area. So I decided that I was going to go on vacation, and again, I'm a big for the listeners who don't know, I'm a big family oriented person and friends. I love hanging out with my friends. I didn't have a money for a huge vacation, so I was like, what's better than going home, just hanging out? Could take the drive. I can afford the gas to go home and everything. I can do that. So let's drive home and go with it that way. And while this was happening, my friend just happened to break up about 4 weeks prior when I was planning this whole vacation. And then when this whole incident happened, and they'd been broken up for about 6 to 7 weeks. And we had the friendship, like where I told you before we started this, where when we dated someone, we kind of just let, you know, each other go each other's way, respected, the relationship and everything. And then, if we weren't dating, then we'd come back and talk a lot more. And
Hmm.
it's, some people may not understand that, but when you actually do it, it shows a lot of respect to the people who are dating at the time, and that people don't realize that when it's happening.
Right.
And so I uh, decided when we were talking that we're like, all right, I got the weekend available. Let's hang out. And so then she just happened to move into her own place about a week and a half prior. And she's like, okay, very good. She's like, let's hang out on Saturday. Like, like I said, I'm like, all right. And I was driving up there on Saturday, and this was April 13th, by the way, which I always note this date because everybody's like, are you sure that wasn't Friday the 13th? And I'm like, it felt like Friday the 13th.
Sure. Yeah.
As we